We often underestimate the value of solitude. In a culture that praises hustle, networking, collaboration, and constant connection, being alone is sometimes viewed as a red flag. If you're alone, something must be wrong. You must be struggling. You must be off track. But that's not always the case. In fact, some of the most powerful breakthroughs, realizations, and internal shifts happen in moments of solitude. When everything goes quiet and the noise of the world fades, something rare happens. You begin to hear your own voice. In solitude, you're not performing, you're not pleasing. You're not managing perceptions, you're just being. And that's where the real work starts. Because without all the external input, you're left with the one person you can never escape, yourself. And for some people, that's terrifying. We spend so much time trying to fit in, trying to be liked, trying to prove something to the world, that we forget how to be alone with our own thoughts. We rely so heavily on the feedback and affirmation of others that we forget how to trust our own instincts. But self-trust doesn't come from applause. It doesn't come from being told we're doing a good job. It comes from making decisions in silence, taking steps without a map, and choosing to believe in a direction no one else sees. And you can't build that in a crowd, you build it in the quiet. There's a moment that happens in every meaningful journey, a fork in the road, where no one else can decide for you. You can ask for advice, you can seek opinions, but at some point it's just you and the decision. That moment, that silence, that tension, that's where self-trust is either built or broken. And it's in those moments of solitude that we learn what we're really made of. Most people avoid solitude because it feels uncomfortable, but comfort is rarely where growth lives. Solitude is uncomfortable because it forces us to face the truth, not the version of ourselves we post online, not the version we present in meetings, but the raw, unfiltered, honest self. And it's only when we face that version that we begin to understand what we're capable of. There's a discipline in solitude. When you're alone, there's no one else to blame, no one to lean on, no distractions to hide behind. It's just you. And when you keep showing up in that space day after day, decision after decision, you begin to build something that can't be taught, inner strength. You start to realize that you don't need as much validation as you thought. You don't need everyone to understand you. You just need to trust yourself enough to keep going. We tend to think of strength as something loud, visible, even aggressive. But real strength, the kind that lasts, is often quiet. It's the kind you build in the moments when no one's watching, when you decide to keep working on the idea, even though no one's asking for it. When you choose to wake up early, stay disciplined, stay focused, not because someone is telling you to, but because you decided it matters. That's what solitude teaches you. You start to realize that being alone isn't the enemy. It's a training ground. It's where you discover your convictions, your purpose, your resilience. And once you've walked through that space, once you've built that self-trust, no one can take it from you. There's a myth that holds so many people back. The idea that you have to be ready before you begin, that you need more time, more information, more clarity, more confidence, that somehow, when everything lines up just right, then and only then will it be safe to start. But that moment rarely comes. Waiting to be ready often becomes a disguised form of procrastination. It's a comfortable delay dressed up as preparation. And deep down, we know it. We know that the longer we wait for the perfect moment, the more likely it is that we'll never begin at all. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a result. It comes from action, from stepping into the unknown and figuring it out along the way. The people who build things, lead movements, create change. They didn't start because they were ready. They started because they couldn't not start. Something inside them pushed past the doubt, past the fear, past the discomfort of not having it all figured out. They began in the middle of the mess. It's tempting to believe that successful people are fearless, that they move with certainty from day one. Yeah, but the truth is, most of them were terrified when they started. They had questions, they had insecurities, they had critics, but they acted anyway. They understood something fundamental. That courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to move forward in spite of it. And that decision to take one small step without being ready is what sets everything else in motion. The path only becomes clear when you begin walking. You can't strategize your way into confidence. You earn it through experience, through showing up, making mistakes, learning, adjusting and trying again. Each time you act without full certainty, you teach yourself that you are capable of navigating the unknown, that you can handle discomfort, that fear doesn't have to be a stop sign. This doesn't mean you throw yourself into chaos without any thought or planning. It means you stop letting perfectionism paralyze you. You stop waiting for conditions to be ideal. Because if you're waiting for all the lights to turn green before you leave the house, you'll never go. Starting before you're ready is about embracing progress over perfection. It's about shifting from a mindset of preparation to one of movement. When you begin, even if it's messy, even if it's clumsy, you shift your identity. You're no longer someone who's thinking about it. You're someone who's in motion. That shift changes the way you see yourself, and that change in identity is what gives you momentum. The first step doesn't have to be big. It just has to be honest. It just has to be honest. It just has to be real. It can be sending the email, making the phone call, talk to you, writing the first paragraph, speaking up when you usually stay quiet. The size doesn't matter. What matters is that it breaks the cycle of waiting. People often talk about passion or vision as the fuel that keeps them going. But what really sustains progress is discipline born out of momentum. And momentum doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. You learn more in a single hour of imperfect action than in weeks of theoretical planning. You uncover strengths you didn't know you had. You solve problems you couldn't anticipate. And through that process, you build belief. Not because someone gave it to you, but because you earned it by moving. When you stop waiting to be ready, you free yourself from needing permission. You give yourself the power to start writing your story instead of just dreaming about it. And no one can do that for you. That belief doesn't arrive fully formed. It doesn't drop into your lap with a guarantee or a roadmap. It doesn't show up because someone handed it to you, or because you read the right book or heard the right speech. Belief is something that grows quietly, often in the most isolated places, in the moments where there's no cheering, no confirmation, no validation. It starts in isolation, not because that's easy, but because that's where truth lives. That's where the noise fades and you're left with just one question. Do you really believe in what you're doing even when no one else does? When you strip away the opinions, the applause, the comparisons, you're left with your raw conviction. And conviction doesn't require company. In fact, it's usually born in solitude. It begins when no one else sees what you see, when your vision is still invisible to everyone but you, when the idea is just a seed and all you have is the quiet confidence that it matters. That's the test. Can you hold that belief in the absence of agreement? Can you carry it without needing someone else to carry it with you? Most people think belief shows up once there's traction, once there's proof, but it's the other way around. Belief comes first. It's the foundation you build before the world starts to notice. You don't get to wait for validation and then decide to believe. You decide first. That's what makes belief powerful. It's a choice made in silence, not a reaction to applause. There's a reason why so many people give up before they ever really begin. It's not because they don't have talent or ideas or work ethic. It's because they were waiting for someone else to believe in them before they believed in themselves. But real change, real leadership, real creativity, it never starts with consensus. It starts with conviction. It starts with someone willing to be misunderstood, doubted, even dismissed, for the sake of something bigger than approval. Belief forged in isolation is stronger. It's been tested, it's weathered, it's earned. When you believe in something without needing the world to agree, you become unstoppable. Because you're no longer relying on external energy to move forward. You become your own fuel. And that doesn't mean you don't feel doubt. It means your belief is louder than your fear. Isolation can feel like a punishment, but sometimes it's preparation. It gives you the space to build your voice without interference, to shape your direction without compromise, to listen to your gut instead of the crowd. And when you can sit in that space, not just survive it, but grow in it, you come out with something no one can take from you. A belief that's yours, not borrowed. One that doesn't rise and fall based on how the world responds to you. You don't need a crowd to start. You need clarity. You don't need applause to move. You need alignment with what you value. And that kind of clarity doesn't come in a brainstorm session or a strategy meeting. It comes in the quiet moments, when you're walking alone, when you're building something no one asked for, when you're staying committed, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Isolation reveals what truly matters to you. It strips away the distractions and demands that you answer the deeper questions. Why are you doing this? What do you actually care about? What are you willing to fight for when no one's looking? Those are the questions that shape belief. And the answers don't always come quickly. Sometimes they come in whispers. Sometimes they show up after failure. But when they come, they anchor you. They root you. They give you the strength to keep showing up, even when the world hasn't caught up yet. We often grow up being taught to seek approval from our parents, our teachers, our peers. We learn to perform for praise, to adapt for acceptance, to shift our shape so we can fit into whatever mold earns us recognition. And without realizing it, we start tying our value to how others see us. The applause becomes addictive. The likes, the compliments, the nods of approval, they start to define how we measure progress. But there's a hidden danger in that. When validation becomes the fuel, you become dependent on something you can't control. Validation is fleeting. It's conditional. It's based on perception, and perception shifts constantly. One day you're praised, the next you're questioned. One moment you're a genius, the next you're irrelevant. And if you're not careful, your sense of direction begins to drift with those waves. You stop doing what matters to you, and you start doing what will be celebrated. You adjust your actions not based on integrity or conviction, but based on what's popular, what's trending, what will get you a pat on the back. But action is what creates clarity. Taking a step, even a small one, gives you data. It teaches you. It reveals things you couldn't learn from thinking alone. Waiting for validation before acting is like standing on the edge of a pool, asking people if you should jump in. Instead of just feeling the water yourself, you only really know what you're capable of when you move. You only start to understand your own strength, creativity, and resilience when you take the risk without knowing if there will be applause on the other side. The irony is that the very validation we seek often comes after we've stopped needing it. When people see someone moving with clarity, with consistency, with self-trust, they start to pay attention. Not because that person asked for permission, but because they didn't. Confidence is magnetic, and nothing builds it like action. Not theory, not approval, not permission. Action. Every time you take a step without needing someone to cheer you on, you're training a different muscle. You're building inner leadership. You're saying, I don't need to be seen to stay committed. I don't need applause to stay disciplined. I don't need agreement to move forward. And that is what makes someone unstoppable. People might not understand what you're doing. They might not see the vision. They might question your timing, your methods, your motives. That's normal. Most people can only believe in something once it's already working. But builders, creators, leaders, they have to believe before there's proof. And that belief gets tested in the quiet moments. When the audience isn't watching, when the feedback is neutral, when the crowd goes silent and it's just you and the work. If you depend on external validation to stay motivated, your energy will always be vulnerable to the outside world. But when your motivation comes from a deeper place, from purpose, from curiosity, from drive, you don't need the crowd. You don't need the feedback loop. You become the loop. You become the loop. You act, you learn, you adjust, and you keep going. This doesn't mean you reject support or community. It means you don't need it in order to begin. You welcome encouragement, but you don't wait for it. You appreciate affirmation, but you're not chasing it. You recognize the difference between being acknowledged and being aligned. Alignment comes from within. It's when your actions match your values, even when no one's watching. Validation might follow action, or it might not. That can't be the reason you move. The reason you act has to come from something more stable, something you own, something that stays steady when the world gets loud, and stays steady when the world goes quiet. Leadership doesn't begin when people start following you. It begins long before that, in the quiet moments when you make decisions no one sees. It begins when you choose to take the first step, not knowing who, if anyone, will come with you. Real leadership is forged in the moments where you walk alone, not because you want to be alone, but because the vision you're following hasn't been seen by others yet. And until it is, you have to carry it by yourself. That's the test. Can you move forward when there's no audience? Can you stay committed when no one else gets it? Most people won't understand your journey until they see the results. But that's not when leadership starts. Leadership starts when you decide to go anyway. When you stop waiting for consensus. When you stop needing approval. When the clarity of your mission becomes louder than the noise of the crowd. Walking alone isn't always about solitude. It's about responsibility. It's about being willing to be the first to speak up, the first to take the risk, the first to make the leap. And that requires a kind of inner strength that doesn't come from popularity or support. It comes from alignment, from knowing why you're doing what you're doing, even if no one else understands it yet. It's easy to lead when the momentum is strong, when the support is clear, when the environment is encouraging. But that's not where true leadership is built. True leadership is tested in the absence of all those things. When you're faced with resistance, uncertainty, and doubt. When you're forced to choose between staying quiet and standing firm, between blending in and stepping out. Most people think leadership is about being in front, about visibility, about giving orders or having answers. But that's a narrow view. Leadership is about taking ownership. It's about accepting responsibility for the things that matter most to you. And sometimes that means you'll be misunderstood. You'll be questioned. You'll be alone. Afar. Because not everyone sees the world the way you do. Not everyone has the same urgency or the same clarity. And that's okay. The ability to lead starts with the willingness to go first. Not with confidence that everything will work out, but courage that it's worth trying. It's easy to wait for someone else to take the risk, to speak the truth, to start the change. But leadership means recognizing that maybe that someone is you. Maybe you're the one who has to raise the standard, set the tone, carry the weight. Walking alone isn't a sign that you're lost. Sometimes it's a sign that you're early, that you're ahead of the curve, that you're creating something others haven't caught up to yet. And that's not a burden, it's an opportunity. Because the world doesn't need more echo chambers. It needs people who are willing to see differently, to act differently, to lead differently. You don't earn the right to lead because of a title. You earn it because of your example. Because when others see you walking with purpose, even when it's difficult, even when it's lonely, they begin to trust your direction, not because you told them to, but because you showed them how. That's the difference. Leadership isn't about control. It's about influence. And influence begins with integrity. With consistency, with the courage to keep walking even when the road is unclear, even when the support isn't there yet. Before anyone else believes, you have to believe. Before anyone else shows up, you have to show up. You have to show up. Before anyone else takes the step, you have to take the lead. Not for applause, not for recognition, but because you know what matters, and you're willing to be the first one to move toward it. Doing it alone isn't the end goal, it's the beginning. It's the proving ground, the place where you learn what you're made of. Where you build something that's yours before it ever becomes something others can be part of. Every strong team, every great collaboration, every thriving community starts with one person who was willing to take the first step by themselves. It starts with someone willing to build before there was an audience, to show up before anyone else believed, to create before there was a guarantee. When you do it alone, you're not just executing an idea, you're shaping your values, your habits, your mindset. You're learning how to move with intention, how to stay consistent when there's no external motivation. That experience changes you, it sharpens your vision. It gives you clarity on what matters. And that clarity becomes essential when others eventually join you. Because when people come on board, they don't just follow your actions, they follow your conviction. And that conviction has to be earned in the trenches of doing the work when no one else is around. It's easy to romanticize the idea of doing it with others, of building something as a team, of growing something big and collective. But the truth is, unless you've done it alone first, you won't know how to lead when others arrive. You won't know how to make decisions when things get hard. You won't have the depth of understanding that comes from having wrestled with the process by yourself. There's a confidence that only comes from experience, and experience is gained when you take action in isolation. Most people want to skip that phase. They want the support before the struggle. They want the recognition before the effort. But skipping the alone part robs you of resilience. It denies you the chance to truly know what you're capable of. Because when you build something alone, you're not just creating a product or launching a project. You're becoming someone who's grounded. Someone who can't be easily shaken, someone who's earned their voice. And when you've done that work, people feel it. When they meet you, when they hear your story, when they see how you carry yourself, they feel the foundation beneath you. That's when others start to trust you. Not because you convinced them, but because your presence tells the truth. They know you've done the hard parts. They know you didn't wait for perfect conditions. They know you started before anyone clapped, before anyone said yes. Doing it alone teaches you to value your vision. It teaches you to protect it. Because not everyone who joins your journey will understand the weight of it the way you do. But that's okay, because you've built the muscle of carrying it yourself. So when others come along, you're not dependent on them, you're grateful for them. You can lead with humility, not desperation. You can include others from a place of strength, not from a place of needing them to make it real. The people who truly make an impact are the ones who knew how to stand on their own first. Not because they wanted to be isolated, but because they were willing to be. They understood that the early days, the lonely days, the uncertain days, those were the most important ones. That's where the tone is set. That's where the identity is formed. That's where the heart of the mission is forged. Oaks, when the time comes to invite others into what you're building, you'll be ready. Because you didn't wait for company to start. You took the first step. You laid the first brick. You stayed in the work when it wasn't glamorous. And because of that, what you're building will be stronger. Not just because others joined you, but because you built it in a way that others could join. You went first, and that made all the difference.